everyone, welcome to Try Right. This is Pack 365, myself Srija. So today in this session we are going to learn about the anatomy of urinary bladder and also about the urethra. So coming to urinary bladder. So what is urinary bladder? It is a hollow muscular balloon-like organ that stores urine temporarily and also helps in control emptying. So it is a part of lower urinary tract. So the bladder, it acts like a water tank for urine, filling and emptying as needed. So where it is located? So this bladder, it lies in the pelvic cavity. So it is positioned just behind to the pubic symphysis, which is a front bone of the pelvis. So it is an empty bladder. It stays completely in the pelvis, small like a collapsed pouch. If it is a full bladder, it expands upward into the lower abdominal cavity, and this is why a full bladder can be felt in the lower abdomen. So the bladder behaves like a balloon, which is a small when empty and large and rounded when full. So what are the 6 specific anatomical relations to the bladder? So the structures around the bladder differ in both males and females. Coming to males, in the anterior, the front position, there is a pubic symphysis. So the bladder lies just behind this bone. So to the posterior, to the back part, there is a rectum. And to the inferior, to the below part, there is a prostate gland. So this prostate gland, the bladder sits directly on the top of the prostate and takes superior part. There is a small intestine. So especially when the bladder is empty. So coming to females. For females, the anterior front part is pubic symphysis and the posterior back part is vagina and cervix. So the uterus, they also lies just above and behind the bladder. So because the uterus is just above the bladder, the pregnancy can increase the bladder pressure and also they causes the frequent urination. So what are the important functional features? So detrusor muscle, which is a smooth muscle layer of the bladder, it helps to squeeze the urine out during the micturition. So trigone. Trigone, it's a triangular area which is inside the bladder formed by 2 ureter openings, 1 urethral opening. So this is trigone, it is smooth and sensitive, which helps to signal when the bladder is full. And you can also find the urethral sphincters, which is an internal sphincter and external sphincter. So internal sphincter, it's an involuntary smooth muscle and external sphincter, it's a voluntary skeletal muscle. So this allows to control the urination. So this is a picture of the urinary bladder and urethra in both males and females. So you can find the detrusor muscle, the urethral opening and the trigone, internal urethral sphincter, the prostate gland and also the prostate urethra. And what is the difference between male and female? In male, you can find the prostate gland and in female, it is absent, right? So next, what is the shape of the urinary bladder? So when empty, it is a pyramidal shape. Like the bladder looks like a triangle or pyramid. The apex points forward, the base faces backward. So it stays fully inside the pelvis. So when it is filled, it looks like ovoid or spherical shape. So as urine fills, the bladder expands upward. Like the smooth muscle, which is called as detrusor muscle, it allows it to become rounded. So when it is very full, it can rise into the lower abdomen and can be felt. So now what is the capacity of the bladder? So the normal capacity is 300 to 500 milliliter. So most people feel the urge to urinate around this range. So what is the maximum tolerable capacity? 800 to 1000 ml of urine. So beyond this, discomfort and risk of over-distension occur. So the bladder always behaves like a water balloon, triangular when empty and round when full. So what are the parts of the urinary bladder? So the bladder has 4 main parts: the apex, body, fundus or base and neck. So here is a picture which shows you the parts of the urinary bladder, and this left side there is the apex and this is the body which is brown in color, and the top of the body it is a base, and to the side, to the right side of the body it is a ureter, and to the downwards it is a neck, and through apex you can find the median umbilical ligament. So what is apex? Apex is the front most anterior tip of the bladder. So it points towards the pubic symphysis, which is present in the anterior side. So this is connected to the umbilicus, which is a belly button, by the median umbilical ligament, which is a remnant of a fetal urachus. So in the fetus, the urachus connected the bladder to the umbilical cord. In adult, it turns into a ligament. Whereas the second part is body. So body, it's the largest and central part of the bladder. So as shown in this diagram, it's the largest and central part of the bladder. So this is made up of detrusor muscle, which is a smooth muscle. So it can stretch a lot. So this is a region that expands most when the bladder fills. So the body is highly distensible because it has smooth muscle that relaxes as the urine fills. So this is about the body. So next part is fundus or base. So fundus or base, this is the posterior back surface of the bladder. So in males it is related to the seminal vesicles to the rectum, whereas in females related to the vagina and uterus. So the fundus is most important in pelvic examinations and also the surgeries because of this proximity to the reproductive organs. So now what is the neck of the bladder? So this neck of the bladder, it is lowest and narrowest part of the bladder. So it continues as the urethra. It contains the internal urethral sphincter, which is made up of smooth muscle. So as you know that smooth muscle is always has the involuntary control action. So what is the function of the neck? It prevents the urine leakage. In males, it prevents the retrograde ejaculation. Nothing but semen going into the bladder. So the bladder neck is like the nozzle of the bottle. It controls flow out of the bladder. So these are the parts of the bladder. So what are the internal features of the urinary bladder? So what is the first one? Bladder mucosa. So this bladder mucosa, it is lined by transitional epithelium, which is also called as the urothelium. So this is a special type of epithelium which is found only in the urinary tract. So this can stretch even without tearing. So what is the function of the bladder mucosa? It allows the bladder to expand as it fills. It protects the underlying tissues from the urine. So next is rugae. So when the bladder is empty, the mucosa forms folds called as rugae. So when the bladder fills, the rugae flatten out to allow the expansion. So this transitional epithelium, this has the property of changing the shape of the cell. So these are round when relaxed and flat when stretched. So this is why the bladder can hold large amounts of urine without damage. So this is the first feature of the bladder mucosa. And the second one is trigone. So what is this trigone? It is a smooth triangular area which is present inside the bladder. So this is located at the base of the fundus. Like unlike the rest of the bladder, it has no rugae. So there are two boundaries of the trigone. Two ureteric openings and one internal urethral orifice. So why this is important? Because it is highly sensitive to stretching. So it helps to initiate the urge to urinate. So this also guides urine smoothly from ureters to the urethra. So trigone, it is a common site for infections in females due to short urethra. So it is also known as inaction zone because it does not contract like other bladder muscles. And in this picture, you can find this trigone, bladder neck, urethra, and the external urethral orifice and internal urethral sphincter. So these are the two ureteric orifices, right? And the second layer is the detrusor muscle, which is smooth muscle, and which has a voluntary action. So the urinary bladder wall is made up of 4 layers. Okay, so what is the wall structure of the bladder? The bladder wall has 4 layers, each with a specific function. So you have to think of the bladder like a 4-layer flexible water balloon, which stores the urine safely and also stretches without damage. So before layers, trigone and orifices. So I have already told you this trigone, it has 2 ureteric orifices and internal urethral orifice. So coming to the first bladder wall layer, which is mucosa. So mucosa, it's the innermost layer, right? So it is made up of transitional epithelium, which is also called as the urothelium. So it is a unique tissue which is found only in the urinary system. So cells can change shape, rounded when the bladder is empty and flat when bladder is full. So it prevents the urine from damaging the underlying tissue. Lamina propria. So this is mucosa, it's supported by lamina propria. Lamina propria, it's a thin layer of connective tissue under the epithelium. It contains small blood vessels and also the immune cells. What does it do? It allows the bladder to stretch without tearing, and it forms a rugae, which is a folded structure when empty. And the second layer is submucosa. Submucosa, it is a layer of loose connective tissue. It contains blood vessels, nerves and lymphatics. So what is the function of submucosa? It acts like a cushion layer and also it supports the mucosa. It supplies the nutrients and also it controls the sensation. So you have to think this submucosa as a support padding beneath the inner lining. And the third layer is muscular layer, which is also called as the detrusor muscle. So muscular layer, it is a thick smooth muscle layer. It consists of three layers which is not always distinctly visible. So what are those three layers? Inner longitudinal layer, middle circular layer and the outer longitudinal muscle. So what is the main function of the muscular layer? It is responsible for the urination. It contracts to push the urine out during the micturition. So if there is overactive bladder, you can find excessive detrusor contractions. So the spinal cord injury, it can also cause the detrusor dysfunction. And here you can find the picture, the wall structure of the urinary bladder. And the first here it is mucosa layer and the second submucosa, the third muscular layer and the fourth layer is adventitia. And this is the opening of the ureter at the right side. And in the middle there is a trigone which is a triangular shape and this is the urethral opening. And the fourth layer is adventitia which is serosa. So serosa, it is a connective tissue layer covering most of the bladder, adventitia. Whereas serosa, it is only on the upper surface of the bladder, that is peritoneum. So what is the function of this layer? It provides support and anchoring to the surrounding structures in the pelvis. So adventitia, it acts as an anchor, whereas serosa, it is a smooth slippery covering from the peritoneum. So next is, here in this diagram you can see the anatomic drawings of the bladder from inside to outside. You can find the lumen over here, which is space where urine is stored, and mucosa, which is the urothelium lining, and next to mucosa there is a submucosa, which is a supportive connective tissue, and then to submucosa there is a muscular layer, which is a thick smooth muscle responsible for contracting during the urination, and then subserosa, which is a thin connective tissue, and the serosa or adventitia, it's the outermost covering of the bladder. So next is blood supply of the bladder, the arterial supply. The main artery is superior vesical artery. It is a branch of internal iliac artery and it also supplies the upper part of the bladder. The second artery is inferior vesical artery in males. So it supplies base and neck of the bladder. It also supplies prostate and seminal vesicles. Whereas vaginal artery in females, what does it do in females? It replaces the inferior vesical artery. It supplies the lower bladder, vagina and cervix. So now how when venous drainage is done in the bladder? The blood drains into vesical venous plexus. From there, it drains into internal iliac vein. So why? It has three muscle layers. So three layers, they allow the bladder to stretch in all the directions. So these are efficient squeezing of the urine during urination. So why it is different outer coverings? The top of the bladder, it touches the peritoneum, whereas other parts lie outside the peritoneal cavity. So this is about the parts of the bladder, coverings of the bladder and how blood supply is done to the bladder. So the next part, the last part of the urinary system is urethra. So what is urethra? It is a muscular tube that carries urine from the bladder to the outside of the body. So the structure and length of the urethra are very different in males and females. So where does it start? It starts as a internal urethral orifice like a opening in the bladder neck. So what type of lining does it have? So what type of epithelium? So urethra, it consists of three different epithelial types as you move towards the outside. The one is transitional epithelium, nothing but urothelium near the bladder, and it has pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium in the middle portion, and also the stratified squamous epithelium near the external opening to withstand the friction. So the change in the epithelium protects the urethra from both urine and physical wear. So what are the muscles around the urethra? So around the internal urethral sphincter, it has a smooth muscle which is an involuntary muscle. It is present at the bladder neck. It prevents the urine leakage, and it also prevents the semen from going back into the bladder during ejaculation. So around external urethral sphincter, it has a skeletal muscle which is a voluntary muscle. It gives the conscious control over the urination. It is also located in the urogenital diaphragm. So what is the detailed anatomy of male urethra? So we will be discussing about separate anatomy of the male urethra as well as the female urethra, because urethra differs in both males and females. Okay. So coming to male urethra. So male urethra, it is approximately 20 to 22 centimeter, which is much longer than the female urethra, which is only about 3 to 5 centimeter. So what are the two major functions of male urethra? The urination and ejaculation. So urination is nothing but the passage of urine, and ejaculation is nothing but the passage of semen, which is a shared pathway. So what are the divisions of the male urethra? The male urethra, it is divided into four anatomical parts. So pre-prostatic urethra, prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and spongy urethra. So what is pre-prostatic urethra? Is also called as intramural urethra. So where is it located? It lies inside the bladder neck. This is the part just before the prostate begins. So you can see this picture over here. This is the intramural part of the male urethra. So how long it is? 0.5 to 1.5 centimeters. So this is very short length actually. So what is the muscle around it? It is surrounded by the internal urethral sphincter, which is a smooth muscle and also an involuntary muscle. So what is the epithelial lining? Transitional epithelium, as same as the bladder. It allows stretching. And what is the major function of this intramural urethra? It prevents the semen from flowing back into the bladder during the ejaculation. So this is called as preventing retrograde ejaculation. You have to think this pre-prostatic urethra segment as a gatekeeper between both the bladder and prostate. So the next is prostatic urethra. So it runs through the prostate gland. So this length is 3 to 4 centimeter. So what are the special characteristics of this prostatic urethra? It has important structures, like it is the widest and most easily expandable part of the male urethra. This wide lumen, it allows the passage of both the urine and also the semen easily. So these are the important structures inside the prostatic urethra. That is, on the right side, you can see the picture of the prostatic urethra. So in this diagram, you can find the urethral crest. So this is urethral crest. It is a raised ridge on the back wall of the prostate urethra. And the seminal colliculus, it is a small elevation in the middle of the urethral crest. So it is also called as verumontanum. And the third is prostatic sinuses. So these are the grooves on each side of the urethral crest. So this is the urethral crest, right? On each side you can have the grooves. So this prostatic ducts open here. So prostate secretions enter here. And next is the ejaculatory duct opening. So this opens on the seminal colliculus, and this is where the semen enters the urethra. And the last feature is prostatic utricle. So what is prostatic utricle? It is a small blind pouch in the seminal colliculus, which is a remnant of a Mullerian duct. So what is the epithelial lining of this prostatic urethra? It is also lined by the transitional epithelium. So now why is this prostatic urethra clinically important? because enlargement of the prostate can compress this area. It causes the difficulty in urinating, weak urine stream, straining, and also incomplete emptying. So why do many ducts open here? Because it is a common region, right? This is a common region where the urine and reproductive secretions mix before exiting the body. So intramural urethra, it's the entrance gate, where prostatic urethra, it's a main hall with multiple doorways. So next, coming to the membranous urethra. So what is membranous urethra? It is a male urethra. It is a tube that carries urine from the bladder and also the semen during ejaculation to outside of the body. So this membranous urethra, it is also called as the intermediate urethra. It passes through the urogenital diaphragm, which is a region of muscles in the pelvic floor. It has a length of about 1 to 2 centimeters, very short length. So this is surrounded by external urethral sphincter. So this is a voluntary skeletal muscle. It helps to control the release of the urine. So you have to tighten it when you had the urine. So this is the narrowest part of the urethra except for the external opening. So this membranous urethra, it is a less stretchable. So it also has the epithelial lining in which the type of cells inside it. So it also has a pseudostratified or stratified columnar epithelium. So this membranous urethra, it is a common site where the injuries or strictures occur, especially in the pelvic fractures. So this is very much important in the continence control because of the sphincter. And you can find the picture of membranous urethra over here. This is the bladder, prostate and penis. And these are the sections of the male urethra. What are those? The prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and the penile or spongy urethra. So the next, coming to the fourth type of urethra, is a spongy or penile urethra. It is the longest part, like it is about 15 centimeter in length. So around all the four types of urethra, the spongy urethra is large in length. So where it is located, it runs inside the corpus spongiosum, which is the soft tissue around the penis. It begins at the bulbar urethra and also it ends at the external urethral meatus, which is the opening at the tip of the penis. And what are the wilder sections? The bulbal urethra, which is a proximal part and slightly expanded, and the navicular fossa, which is a distal part near the tip, which is the another widening. So the functions of the spongy urethra is to carry the urine and semen out of the body. So it is covered by the pseudostratified columnar to stratified squamous epithelium near the external opening. See, what are the points you have to remember about the membranous urethra? It is the shortest, narrowest, surrounded by the external sphincter and through the urogenital diaphragm. So coming to spongy urethra, you have to remember it is the longest part. It is located inside the corpus spongiosum and it opens outside the body. So next, what are the features of the spongy urethra? It is a mucus secreting gland, also called as Littering glands. So these are the tiny glands located along the spongy urethra. So these are the tiny glands which produces the mucus while it helps to lubricate the urethra, and also it protects the urethral lining from the urine irritation. So it provides the lubrication also during the ejaculation, and it also acts as bulbourethral gland ducts which open into the proximal part. So what are bulbourethral glands? They are also called as Cowper glands, right? They are the paired glands which are present on the either side of the male reproductive system. So they releases the clear supply fluid before the ejaculation, which is called as the pre-ejaculatory fluid. So this fluid, it neutralizes the acidic urine residue in the urethra. It also lubricates the urethra and the tip of penis. So their opening is in the bulbar part of the urethra, which is the beginning of the spongy urethra. So why does it change? Why does this spongy urethra changes near the meatus? Because of this area is exposed to the outside environment and it needs the stronger and protective cells. And here there are the important structures in the diagram. So this is the bulbar part, which is the beginning part inside the bulb of the penis, and this is the penile part which runs along the shaft, and the navicular fossa over here, which is a widened area near the tip, and the external urethral orifice, which is the opening through in which the urine and semen exit the body, right? And you can also find this lacuna magna, which is a small pouch-like widening inside the navicular fossa. And this is a clear picture of how the urinary bladder connected to the penis in males and how they are related. So this is about the features of urethra and also the anatomy of urethra. So this is for today's session. I hope this session has helped you. So in the next session, you will be able to learn about the female urethra. Thank you.